Okay. All right. Now, let's try this again. Okay, sorry about any delays we've had. A few technical issues along the way. So, as I was trying to say, but nobody heard me, we're here tonight to have a chat about any high-risk questions. If anyone's got any going through the assessments at the moment, or they're booked into a course, if there's anything they want to know about it, just pop online and let us know. Okay, and we'll help you out, see what we can do. When you do get into the course, you'll find there is a lot of new jargon you may not have heard before. So if there's anything you're unsure about, just get on board and ask the question. All right, so what we'll do while we're waiting for some to turn up, I'll have a bit of a chat about what to expect when you get to the course. Okay, so as I said, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking. It's a whole lot of new information that you may not have heard before. Now, my best advice is when you're going through the course, the best way to do the study, once you go in, on day one, you get given a bunch of questions, a whole lot of information. Now, when you're trying to take that information in, my best advice is when you're doing your homework at the end of the day, the best way to try and remember it is if you've got somebody else at home that can go through the questions with you and ask them verbally. I think you'll find, and most of my students have found, that that's the best way to absorb the information, especially if you've got a partner there asking the questions, because they love telling you when you're wrong, and you'll try and remember it so that they don't stir you up next time. Okay, so we're starting to get a few people on board now, so if you have any questions, just jump on board and let us know what you're thinking. All right. What I might do is, through the course of the week, I've put a few community polls up, and we've had a few different answers in that, so I might go through a couple of them and we'll cover off why the answers are what they are. Okay, let me go back to, where am I? Go back to my page over here. Go back to my channel and the community section. All right, so where do we start? Alright, so first poll I'll put up. So, how often must lifting clutches be proof tested? Okay, so if you go back a number of years, it used to be every 6 months, and it was quite common that it was every 6 months they needed to get proof tested. But a few years ago they did actually change the regulations, and they actually changed it to every 12 months. So every 12 months your lifting clutches have to be proof tested. Also, if there's any risk that they've been overloaded, or if there's any chance they've been overloaded, you've got to get them sent off to be proof tested in that case as well. Okay, so that covers that one off. All right. Now, that question, you'll probably find that in both basic and intermediate as well. All right. Now, next one. So, safety factor for lifting and bracing inserts in a concrete panel. Okay, so the answer is, once again, it's been changed from the past. It is now 2.25. Alright, so essentially that's saying if the insert is rated for, let's say, 5 tonne, it's got to be able to lift, what's a quarter 5, 1 1/4, or 1, yeah. Alright, so it's got to be essentially rated to be lift 12 and a quarter tonne. Right, so it's, yeah, so the safety factor for lifting inserts is 2.25. Okay, and we've got slightly over half of the respondents got that one right, so 59% got that one right. Okay, now next one is, well, it's probably one of the easy ones because it's the one most people seem to remember for some reason. But the minimum diameter for a tagline, okay, we got 77% got a correct answer on that one, so that was 16 millimeters. Now, the idea behind that is with 16 millimeter rope, it's going to fit nicely in the hand. If it's too small, you'll find it'll just drag out through your hand and you'll end up burning your hand. Keep in mind it's also got to be a non-conductive rope, so typically a dry natural fibre, right? Because especially if you're working near power lines, the last thing you need is for anything to run down the rope into your hand as well. Alright, where are we? Okay, so that's our rope. Okay, what is the maximum angle between two legs of a sling that have been choked around a load? Okay, once again, old answer used to be 90 degrees, but going back a few years now, they actually changed it to 60 degrees. So if you've got your slings choked around the load, they can have an angle no greater than 60 degrees. All right, now if it's a direct lift, so if it's not choked and it's directly onto the load, then 120 degrees is going to be your maximum angle there as well. Okay, so what I'll do is I will give you an example of that one. I should have it here in front of me if I go back to my page. Okay, where am I? My channel. Okay, go to a short. So just one I put up the other day actually, it's a good example of this. So if I drag this over to here, see if it works like that. Alright, so if no, that's just stopped. Let's not do that one, let's do it like this. Yeah. No, that's not working, that's not working. Right, don't you love technology? Alright, let's drag this page over. Alright, so I'll just transition over to here for a sec and I'll press play on this one. Now, I'll just take a look. Oh, didn't quite get the shot of it on that one. So let's bring it back. Alright, we'll just wait until you get a better view. Alright, so we've got these things here choked on this load. So the angle at the top here, right, that can be no more than 60 degrees. Now the best way to check whether or not it's 60 degrees is if the distance between these 2 points is greater than the length of the slings, then essentially you're going to have an angle at the top that's greater than 60 degrees. Because if you go back to high school geometry, you remember an equilateral triangle, so if they're all the same size, you'll have 60 degrees on every angle. So if that distance between those two is greater than the length of one of your slings, you're going to end up with an angle greater than 60 degrees. All right, so just remember, if it is choked there, 60 degrees is your maximum. However, if it was a direct lift, all right, you could have had it almost all the way, well, in this instance, you could have had it all the way out to the ends, because 120 degrees would be your maximum angle. Although you would try and avoid that because it would derate the slings a lot as well. Okay, so let's just go back over here. All right. So, got a first question up. So, how long should you spend dogging or rigging before you jump into a crane? All right, great question. This is one I do get asked a lot. Now, a lot of people will have a lot of different opinions on this, but I honestly believe you should be spending at least 2 or 3 years under the hook before you jump into a crane. Now, a lot of people, they want to rush into the crane, but if you don't understand what your dogman's doing out there, you're not going to be able to tell whether or not they're doing the right thing. Now, unfortunately, with today, you do get a lot of green riggers out there, and the last thing you want is to have a green rigger and a green operator on the same job. Now, if you've got a bit of time under the hook, say 2 or 3 years with a bit of experience, then start thinking about jumping into a crane. Now, even when you get into a crane, it's going to be a bit of a split shift to start with. You're not going to be putting a crane and stuck in there all the time. Typically, you'll just generally work your way into it. Now, in saying that, there's nothing wrong with, even after 12 months, if you go out and get your license, and that way, if you get an opportunity in a yard, right, you can get a bit of training in the yard, moving counterweights around, moving a bit of lifting gear around in the yard, before you actually go out there and go on your first job. So working in the yard is a great way to get experience, and you've usually got more experienced people around you in those instances to give you a hand. Whereas if you're out on the job, you've typically got the riggers who may not be operators to give you a hand if something does go wrong. Particularly if you've ever had any experience with some groves, etc. They can come up with errors, and if you're not sure how to fix it, you could be stuck on site for a while trying to suck the boom back in. Alright, so I hope that's covered your question. So, anyone else out there have any questions about the cranes or the rigging, or pretty much anything else that you'd like to talk about? Okay. Okay. Yes, no. Alright. Let's go back to what we were on before. Let me see. Go back to the community. Let's go back to the community, because we were coming up to an interesting one here. All right. Actually, phone's beeping as well as we go. So, what's the biggest mistakes that you see from new operators? Okay, well, that's a good question, but look, a lot of people can make the different mistakes. The biggest issue I find most new operators are going to try and make is, hang on, I think you'll find a lot of new operators. Something tells me you're not on the right screen. Let's have a look, see what you're showing. No. All right, so. Okay. So what's the mistake that most operators make? Well, that's a preview. That should be on. Yeah, that's the screen that I should be on, I think. Okay, now, big mistake a lot of operators make is they try to go too fast, too quick. Now, especially when I'm training a crane course, the one thing I do try and drill into the students is don't try and go fast to start with. Learn to control the load. Now, if you learn to control the load, the speed will come with time. So don't rush out there and just try and go fast and try and keep up with everyone else. Learn to control it. If you try and go fast straight away, you're pretty much going to be a crap operator for 20 years. If you learn to control the load and then you start speeding up, you'll find the speed will come and you'll become a much better operator for it. Okay, got a couple of more questions here. So what else we got? Okay, for erecting and dismantling tower cranes, is intermediate rigging is enough, or should I get my advanced? Okay, now erecting and dismantling tower cranes, the ticker required is intermediate, covers it. Advanced isn't really needed in terms of construction work. Okay, advanced is more if you're going to be doing things like swing stages and all that sort of thing. You're going to find more if you're working in the entertainment industry, you're going to be more likely to use it. But in construction, intermediate is typically all you need. Now, as far as tower cranes go, now you will hear a lot of people tell you need to have a gold card as well. Now that depends who you're working with. There is no legal requirement to have a gold card to do a tower crane. But you'll find typically, depending on which state you're working in, some of them are going to say you do more than others. But as far as the legal requirements go, the intermediate rigging is as much as you need. Now, tower cranes, look, it is a pretty risky business when you're doing the tower crane. So one thing you do need to make sure of, and look, no one is going to put you out there by yourself, okay? Because it is a pretty hazardous job and you're going to go out there with an experienced crew. And I'll tell you what, over the years I've met some bloody good riggers out there that just specialise in doing tower cranes as well. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, but definitely intermediate rigging is the one you need in order to do that tower crane licence. Okay, here we go. What else we got here? So what have we got here? So we've got to a new site. I'm used to double wrapping, doing the wrap where you go through and back over the leg on each side, and it's a shortcut. If you're following me, is this okay to do? I'm used to double wrapping stooges, but guys have been doing it the wrap where you go through and back over the leg on each chain side. It's a shortcut. If you follow me, is this okay to do? Okay, now if I'm understanding what you're asking, if you have a look at the video I've done on slinging a stillage, I think it's the second or the third example I gave. If that's the one you're looking at, it is perfectly fine to do. Now, a lot of people will tell you that you can't, it puts too much strain on the leg and it's not designed for it and everything else. But what you'll find is the stillage, just like everything else, if you inspect your equipment, it's going to be perfectly fine. It takes very little side force on the edge of it. You will get some people say, oh, it's going to break the leg. The only way it's ever going to break the leg is if you're picking up an old rusted out stillage that's got a lot of damage to it, in which case you would never use it anyway. There's a lot of sites that have been doing it that way for years, never had an incident. And although I've heard people tell me all the time that, oh yes, this can happen and that can happen, I've never known it to happen, I've never seen it happen, and I've never spoken to anyone who's actually seen it happen. Someone's heard it's happened, but look, it's one of those things. I think, honestly, some safety officer somewhere has perceived it as being dangerous and they said, no, everything has to be double wrapped. But personally, if it's how I think you're talking about, where you come down, you go from the inside leg round to the outside, over the top, on the other side you go from the outside back to the inside, and then handshake in the middle, and then just bite in the middle, that's perfectly fine. I've never had an issue doing it, and it's my preferred method of doing it. Double wrapping it's one of those things where if you go to a lot of sites that are over-regulated, and yeah, go have a look at the video I've done on the slinging a stillage, and you'll find how I do it. I do start with a double wrap because that's what a lot of sites do ask for. But I do also go through a couple of other alternatives on as well. So go pop over and have a look at that video and see what you think for yourself. All right, now remember, there's always more than one way to skin a cat. Okay, here we go. Coming in thick and fast now. So I work in events. We fly trusses on motors for, and I'm trying to keep up with it going through. We fly truss on motors for stage setups. Can I do this on a basic riggers? Okay, now I'm going to tell you right now, I'm no expert in the entertainment industry. I have worked on a couple of setup jobs, but typically sitting in the crane. Now, as far as pulling setups, pulling trusses up, yes, you can do it on a basic riggers, but if you've got 2 winches pulling it up, then you're going to need an intermediate. Some trusses will be just on a single motor, and you will have no problem doing that on a basic rigging. But if you've got the 2 winches, then it's going to come up as a intermediate rigging because it's classed as a dual lift. All right, so hopes that answers your question. Okay, do you think rigging tickets should cover some 101 entertainment rigging? Basic counterweight, fly systems, chain blocks and chain motors. I've been told they're not covered in any of the ticket. I totally agree with you. Now the biggest problem with any courses now is they're just typically not long enough. And look, there's a lot of things that should be covered and probably some things that are covered that maybe not so much. Definitely, I think it's great to be able to cover chain blocks and come-alongs. And to be honest with you, I was actually using them as a TA before I ever got a dogging or a rigging license because I didn't know any better. Now, as far as counterweight fly systems and etc., look, anything you're going to learn in the rigging course, it's only the very basics to help you get through the license. Now, it is up to the employer to make sure that you're competent in anything you do. Now, the problem with teaching the things like a fly setup is you'll find most training organisations, most ones I've seen anyway, most of them will use old truck mount cranes, which will have an underslung fly on as well, which are not, you're not going to find too many of them around in the real world. Most companies have gone to all trains now, which will have a swing around fly on them as well. In saying that, learning how to put out a underslung fly is a great thing to teach someone, because it can be pretty hazardous if you don't get it right. If you go that little bit too far. I actually had a student in C6 a couple of months back. He's been operating a little C2 with an underslung fly, and he was explaining to me how he put the fly out on that. And what he was telling me was, as he was pulling the fly up, he was using the winch to do it rather than booming out. Now, with a little bit of experience, you'll find if you boom out to try and get the fly up, it's going to be a lot more controlled on it as well. So little things like that, yeah, I totally agree. These courses should go a lot longer, but what you'll find is they'll end up being a lot more expensive, and a lot of people won't get the time off to do them as well. So unfortunately, you can't cover everything off in a single course. But when you do get out to site, don't be afraid to tell someone you're green, so that you can start learning from them as well. Okay, moving on. What else do we have here? Okay. Do you have any tips for operating tower cranes? Now, although I do have a tower crane license, I have operated a couple, but not a great deal. And look, I'm not a big fan of them either. Personally, I much prefer mobiles, because I spend a lot of time looking up at the load, and looking down is just a different perspective for me. But the one advice I will give is just the same as any other crane, and same as I said earlier. Just take things nice and slow and steady, and things will, speed will come with a little bit of time. Now, with a tower crane, you've got to remember as well that a lot of times you're going back to the same radiuses. So I keep a little marker in the cab with you, and if you're going back to a particular pickup point all the time, just on the window with your whiteboard marker, just write down your radiuses, and it'll help you remember next time you're going back there what different radiuses to different parts of the building site as well. So you'll find that it actually helps quite a lot when you're on these sites all the time. Okay, alright, so we've gone through them. Any more questions out there? Alright. Okay, so back to our community tab. What do we have? So, what do you think is a rigger's most valuable tool? Alright, so now I actually did this one deliberately, so putting both the Burt bar and the podger in there. Now, the reason I actually use those two as an example is because when you're doing rigging, there's that many different parts of rigging. So if you are doing concrete panels, you're going to find your Burt bar is going to be one of your best friends when you're trying to position those panels and get everything all lined up. Whereas if you're doing a lot of steel work, obviously your podger is going to be your best friend. Even when you're landing motors and trying to line any holes up, always use your podger. Alright, you do see a lot of riggers with missing fingers. Make sure you don't put your finger anywhere it shouldn't be. That's what your podger is actually used for, to help guide your load and into position. Alright. So, what else we got? So, minimum depth for sheet groove used for a wire rope purchase block. Okay, so just about everyone got that one right. You had 93%. So 1.5 times the rope diameter for a wire rope purchase. The 0.5 rope diameter If it was a fibre rope, then it would only have to be half the diameter of the rope. Okay, here we go. Alright, so it looks like we're running out of questions there. Anyone else want to jump on board and ask anything else while I'm on board here? Yes, no. Alright. So I've still got a few people out there watching, so if you're out there watching, and you just can't think of anything to ask at the moment, don't forget, if you jump onto my channel, like and subscribe, and just hit that notification bar, and anytime we put out some new videos, you'll get updated straight away. Okay, there's quite a good backlog of videos there too. If you are doing a course soon, there are quite a few videos on there covering things like the calculations in all the different assessments, a few little practical tips, etc. Alright, we've got a couple more coming through. Okay. Okay, so there seems to be a void on the entertainment industry riggers tickets, and I totally agree. Look, especially while COVID was on, we had a huge number of entertainment riggers coming through getting their tickets, and there is a lot missing out. There's virtually nothing that we do in the courses that covers what you guys do in the entertainment industry. The best thing to do is, well, you need your licenses to do that work, but position yourself with the experienced blokes and learn from them. Okay, and what you'll find, most trainers like myself don't come from that background either, so I'm probably not the best person to ask. I understand a lot of the basics behind it, but I'm in no means an expert when it comes to the entertainment industry. So go out there, get your tickets, and as I do advise a lot, the advanced ticket is one that is quite commonly used in the entertainment industry as well. Even though when you go and do that ticket, it's not going to cover off a lot of what you're going to actually physically be doing. So line yourself up with the experienced people on the job. That's the only advice I can really give as far as that entertainment industry goes. Okay, what do we got now? I have operated a few mobile cranes, also tower cranes. Catching swing in tower is a bit more harder than mobile. Any advice for that? Okay, now, when you say the swing's a bit harder to catch, it all depends on the size of the tower crane. If you're driving a Cabelco with 72 metres of main and 19 metres of fly, you've got just as much rope out. So it's not so much that it's harder to catch, it's all about the timing. So the principle is still the same. So you still try and catch it on the top of the swing. So I've got a couple of videos there on catching a load swing. Now, what it is look, I'll try and do this, but my advice, go back and have a look at those videos on load swing. But you've got your hook, I'll try and position it there so you can see it. So if the hook is swinging out like that, all right, just as it gets near the top, you bring your boom over the top and you try and meet at the top of it at the same time. Now, when you've got a lot more rope, it can be a lot harder to catch it. And when you do have a light item, if you've got your hook lock, then some long chains and something light again, then you're sort of doubling up on the work as well. But it's all about timing. Also the best advice I could give, so catching the load part 3, I believe it is, will tell you that and give you a couple of tips on, rather than learning to catch it, is better to learn not to put the swing in it in the first place. So it's all about, typically if I start to slew, I'll start slewing, I'll back it off a little bit, let the hook catch up, and then I'll go again with it. So if you watch that video on catching the load swing part 3, that might explain a little bit of that too as well. Alright, what else have we got? Okay. Just giving Shane a bit of advice that advance is mainly needed when you start flying people. Well, yes, you'll need it there, and if you're doing any swing stages as well. All right. Okay. So, how are we all going out there? We got any more questions from you guys? All right. Okay. No more questions. All right. There is a comment that I had earlier on the channel that I would just like to cover. I just want to see if I can find where I had it. Okay, let's go. Okay, I think I need to go over to this one for that. No. Right. Okay. Yeah. I love technology. Okay. Right, open that new tab. No, that's not what I wanted. Try that again. YouTube Studio. I believe that's what I wanted. Okay, comments. Here we go. Okay, so this might upset a few people, this one, but video I did about women in construction. So there's always going to be a bigot out there. So Mr. John Smith, who says, no, especially not in the construction industry, they should be sticking to the homemaker carer roles. Look, mate, get over it. You're in the 21st century now. Even if women do want to go down that line, look, when they're younger, they still need a job, and they're going to make more in the construction industry than they are going to be working at Coles. So everyone has the right to join the industry, and you've got to give them all a fair go as well. All right, so I just wanted to mention that before I go, because I hate seeing those bigoted comments on there. Okay. So, Shane, I would have a few years experience before you need to do any advanced rigging in entertainment. Yes, I totally agree. One thing I hate is people who rush through their tickets. Get experience on the way up. Look, dogging and basic rigging, you can sort of go hand in hand, and you can go and get them one after the other. But as far as intermediate goes, I'd spend a bit of time before you go into intermediate. Because if you're going to be lifting panels or building cranes, obviously you want to have some sort of idea and some sort of experience behind you as well. And same again before you went from intermediate to advanced. You want those, if you're going to be doing things like setting up swing stages and flying foxes and all that sort of stuff, all right, you want to make sure you have a little bit of experience behind you as well. All right, don't go rushing through your tickets. You make good money along the way as well. So always get the experience first. All right. Okay. What else do we have in here? All right. Okay. So, any more out there? Okay. I've been watching all your videos. Great stuff. Okay. Thanks, Hattie. I appreciate it. I'm glad that people are getting something out of it. It's the only reason I'm doing it is to help the students. Okay. Also, I have my C6, which done it with... he did his C6 with me, so that's great. I operate a few 13-ton and 20-ton. How long you reckon I need to operate them before I get my open crane ticket? Okay, so now look, it's a big jump from a 20-tonner to an open crane. Look, even though you've got your C2 and you've had that for a little while, I'd still try and get into a few bigger cranes in that class as well, particularly in all-terrain, because if you're driving a 13 and 20-ton, I'm going to guess you're driving bubble cranes or city cranes. Can't think of any all-terrain that small. 30 is probably the smallest I can think of. So you do get 20-ton truck mounts, But if you're going to be jumping into an open crane, it's typically going to be either a crawler or a all-terrain, more likely an all-terrain. My advice, try and work in some bigger cranes first. Try and see if you can get into a 30 or a 60 or a 55, something along those lines, and just get a little bit of experience in those all-terrains, because they are a totally different beast to those little bubble cranes as well. All right, so it's not so much about how much time should you spend in it, it's about trying to get that little bit of experience on the way up as well. Okay. Okay, Shane. Jesus, I've been doing it for years. All right, so what exactly you've been doing for years, Shane? No idea what. Okay. All right. So it's still got a few people on board. All right. So while there's a little bit of a lull in the question, so once again, if you look in the look in the description, you'll find the link to subscribe. Actually, I think there's one on the screen there as well. Awesome. Yeah, don't forget to tick that little subscribe button, and you'll keep updated on all the videos as they come out as well. All right, any more questions out there? All right, scrolling down. No. All right. Okay. All right, so anybody out there about to start doing a course in the next couple of weeks? All right. Any information you're anything you're nervous about, anything you want to find out about? Yep. If you're just booked into a course, let us know what you're booked in for and sort of what you're hoping to get out of it. Okay, so Shane, he's been doing it for years in the UK. Yeah, so one thing you do have to remember is none of the overseas tickets are actually good in Australia. You do actually need to have a Australian high-risk license as well. I have come across that issue a couple of times, setting up stages for overseas performers that like to bring their own rigs with them. They like to take over, and not all of them are exactly as safe as you'd like them to be as well. All right, so yeah, if you are in the entertainment industry and you're working with some of those international ones, keep in mind they don't always have the same, well, look, they try and tell you they don't have the same safety regulations they do. Some just like to bend the corners a little bit as well. All right, make sure you are doing everything safe out there. Okay, remember we all want to go home safe at the end of the day. All right. Lost my list of questions. Where do they go to? I might have to. Here they go. Yep. Yeah, a few people getting advice to spend the time under the hook before you go for events, which is great advice. I wouldn't rush any of the tickets through. Okay, so. Okay. I go for my basic riggers course end of this year at Multi Skills. Any advice? Okay, so go for your basic riggers. My advice is brush up on what you did in the dogging. What you'll find is a lot of your high-risk licenses is going to be very similar in the first half of it. It's going to have all the same safety questions about what's a hazard, what's a risk, power line distances, all those sorts of things to consider other than hazards, and all those typical questions you're going to find in all your high-risk licensing. So do a bit of a refresher on any of the course materials you had from your dogging course, and if you get some pre-course material, which should be sent out to you, if you booked into the Cert 3 in rigging, you've probably already had it sent out to you anyway. Make sure you go through it all and study it all. Jump on to my channel and go through the basic rigging calculations, because a lot of people sort of get struggle with the calculations, but they're actually quite simple. It's just a few formulas. If you remember the formulas, just go through the process, remember the formulas, put the numbers underneath it, jump on a calculator, you get the answer. All right, so my advice would be study that document material, look at the material that's been sent out to you, and jump on my videos for the calculations. If you need to brush up on the whistles, you've got the video there on the whistles as well. Also, basic rigging, the knots for basic rigging, I've also got the video on them as well. So have a look through those videos as well, go through them, keep going over them, get them down pat. And what you'll find with things like the calculations and the knots is once you've got your head around them, they're quite easy and you'll remember them for a long time. So if you start practicing now, it'll make it a breeze. You'll be 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the class. So do yourself a favour, jump online, have a look at those videos and start studying, and good luck. Okay. Start my doggers tomorrow in Werribee. Okay, so I guess you're going to be starting with Peter tomorrow in Werribee. All right. So, yeah, once again, got the videos on board. So things like sling selection, the knots for dogging, got the calculations for dogging. You can jump on board, you can do all them. Okay, and Pete's going to be great. He'll give you a hand going through it as well. If you do have any questions, just stick your hand up and ask. The biggest problem I find with students is they sit quietly in the background. If they start talking about something you're not sure what they're asking, stick your hand up and ask. You'll find you'll remember the answers a lot easier if you actually understand the reason behind the question. And Peter will be great. He'll help you out along the way as well. All right, and once again, good luck with it. Okay. I have my HC truck license. Do you think getting MC license could help me to get a bigger crane hire company? Well, honestly, it depends where you work. If you're working in the cities, etc., you're not going to need a MC license. Look, in saying that, there are companies, Membreys is one that comes to mind, that do they're a truck company as well as a crane company. It could help you with a company like that. If you are working remotely in the Pilbara, for example, and they do quite often run trucks with 2 or 3 counterweights of trailers, 2 or 3 trailers of counterweights down to the mine sites. So in that instance, it could be helpful. But typically, if you've got a HC license, look, a lot of crane companies are looking for riggers with the HC license, so that's going to be a big benefit for you. All right. You'll find a lot of these companies, they may hire you as a truck driver to start with as well, and because a truck driver can unload the counterweights and dog floor it is great and handy to have, but it's also a trap. I do see a lot of riggers, they get trapped into driving the truck all the time as well. But like I said, it depends who you work for, and let them know that you ideally want to be a rigger, but you do have the ability to drive trucks. Okay. Okay. All right, that's the end of our questions at the moment. All right, anyone else out there? Okay, here we go. Also, I saw Multiskill is offering a Cert 3 in rigging. I already have my intermediate and crane tickets, but can I do the Cert 3 or nah? Okay, so, well, the short answer is yes. You can get a credit transfer for the licenses you already have. But you've got to ask yourself, why do you actually want it? Look, personally, if I had a Cert 3, I wouldn't put it on my resume anyway. I would just list the licenses. Now, the Cert 3 does involve, look, it's going to be different at every RCO. They will all have different electives, etc. But what I will tell you that the Cert 3 rigging at multi-skills, I know there's personally, it has covers dogging, basic rigging, intermediate rigging, also covers forklift, boom lift over 11 metres. They also do a boom lift under 11 metres and a scissor lift. And I believe working on heights is the other one that's thrown in there as well. Okay, so they're all part of the Cert 3. And if you've got the majority of those licenses, yes, you can still get it and get a credit transfer on it. But is it really worth it? Perhaps you could look at doing a Cert 3 in something else, or I don't know. It's entirely up to you. I can't give you one way or the other. But if you've already got your intermediate, I don't think you're going to get a lot out of the Cert 3, to be honest. Okay. And if there's anyone out there that doesn't have all your tickets yet, that Cert 3 is it's a fantastic course for those that want to get some tickets as well. All right, it does cover pretty much all the tickets you need. There's probably a number of RTOs that actually do a Cert 3, so you can always jump on Google and find your nearest one. All right. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So, anyone else out there doing a course very soon that'd like any information about it? All right, jump on board. Yep. And I'll just reiterate that. I'll just reiterate it again. I'll get it out eventually. If you are doing a course, there is a wealth of videos that I've got in the video library that's going to help you along the way as well. Look, the more you can learn before you go into the course, it means you can focus on the stuff you haven't yet learned, so it does make life that little bit easier as well. And look, it's the main reason I actually started doing these videos was basically I started with the knots. A lot of students actually struggled with the knots themselves. They were looking online, but they were looking at the wrong information, and it wasn't helping them out at all. So I figured if they were going to look online, I may as well do some videos that they can actually look at and get. Okay. All right, here we go. What's the practical part of basic rigging? Okay, so now in dogging, you're assessed as an individual. In basic rigging, you're working as a team during the assessment. Now, there's a number of parts to it, and there is a fair bit of practical to cover in the basic rigging. So, the basic rigging, let's make sure I don't forget anything out. So, you've got your knots, obviously, so you've got your double bow line, sheep end, running bow line, and button line. Button line, dogging. Yeah. Alright, jump on the video and cover them on the video anyway. Can't get them off the top of my head. Alright, so you've got to set up a static line. You've got to set up a safety net. Okay, you need to set up a winch. You need to install a CCLP. You need to erect and dismantle a materials hoist. You need to install and remove a perimeter safety screen. Erect and dismantle structural steel. I think I said that, not sure. And the other one is to place some concrete panels. Alright, so there is a fair bit of practical to do in the basic rigging, but you are doing it as a team. But just keep in mind, even if you are working in a team, you're still being assessed individually. And if you're standing around and expecting everyone else to cover you, you will get told as well. Alright, so make sure you jump in, communicate effectively. That's the key point when you're doing any of these group activities. Communicate with your team, talk with each other, and you'll find things are pretty easy to get through. Okay, what else have we got? Alright, no worries at all, and good luck with the basic rigging. Okay. Anyone else have any questions out there for us? Alright. Yeah. Are the knots actually that important to know? I thought it was only used for taglines. Okay. So, if you want your license, yes, they're important to know. Now, what you've got to remember about rigging, like I said, there's a lot of different variations of rigging. You can be doing panels, you can be doing steel work, okay, you can be doing entertainment, you can also be working on boats. Now, if you're working on boats and sailing, knots can become in pretty handy. So your knots and your splicing and your whipping. So that's the other things that you need to do in your basic rigging is your splicing, and you need to do some whipping as well. Right, so you've got to remember different forms of rigging. So you do have rigging on yachts as well is covered by it. So that's where they come into it. Now, the knots you learn in dogging are the knots you're typically going to be using all the time to attach taglines. So you're going to be using your photo hitch, your rolling hitch, and your bowline, most common knots you'll ever use. Alright? As far as the other knots, now, dog bowline, yes, I do use that occasionally on when I need to, but like I said, where the knots and the slice comes into it is because rigging involves rigging of sailing boats and yachts, etc. as well. But like any part of it, if you want your license, you'll need to know them. Alright, because it is all part of the practical assessment. Alright, and you'd hate to do all the hard work and fail just because of a knot or a slice. So, study them up and get that head start on the rest of the class. Alright. Okay, and now I would also like to mention that I have also just opened a shop as well with a few little tools. I'm just getting it off at the moment. Ironing out a few bugs as we go along, but if you want to go and have a look in the description, you'll find a link to the shop as well. So if you're interested, I've put on a few shirts, things like podgies, rigger's belt, some work gloves. Right, I'm just bits and pieces at the moment. I'm just sort of working it out as I go, but don't be afraid to go down to the description, click on the shop and have a look through. Tell us what you think. If you think of anything that needs to go in there or anything that needs to improve, I'm open to suggestions because I'm just winging it as I go. All right, so you'd actually be doing me a favour if you do give me some advice on what to do with that. All right. Okay. All right. Now, on that, all right. So, all right. So, on that note, I think we're going to call it a night. So, thanks for all the questions. I appreciate everyone turning up and showing a bit of support. All right, and I will do this again next Sunday night as well, and I will try and make it a regular thing. All right, so thanks for your listening. Thanks for your support. Don't forget that like and subscribe, hit the notification button, and I will see you next Sunday night. Okay, thank you.